Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here. So I want to talk about the Here's the Storm patch notes for February 14th, 2017, also known as the Lucio patch. And although a lot of these changes were already on the PTR and I already did a video in it, if you're interested in that video, I will put the link in the description. There are actually a lot of changes that were added to this patch that haven't been on PTR and are brand new changes. So those changes are highlighted in orange. So those are the ones I'm really going to go over in this video. I'm going to go over the other changes as well, but I'm just going to give a kind of a brief overview and not go into too much detail. So if you want more detail, check the other video. So again, link in the description. So let's cover this patch. So the first change that we see here is minions. So minion leash range was decreased from 10 to 9. So the 10 to 9 isn't really important. All you really want to know is it really decreased by a factor of 1, which means that previously sometimes the minions might follow you out of lane a little bit far, maybe a little bit further than Blizzard intended, and this change just reduces that. So they'll follow you a little bit less. So let's say on Dragonshire, when you're mid lane and you're rotating bot, the minions won't follow you all the way into the bush and give the enemy team vision of you. There's also a few other examples, say on Cursed Hollow, on the top or bottom tribute, sometimes minions would also follow you into those bushes. So this change basically just makes minions stay in their lane a little bit more. Next change is Butcher's Brand. Casting animation has been sped up by roughly 33%. This should reduce instances of canceling this ability by rapidly issuing other commands. So this is just a quality of life change. You might notice that playing Butcher is a little bit smoother, especially when casting Butcher's Brand, but really this has pretty much no impact on the hero. Valsad got a buff for Hinterlands. Don't know if that's viable. Maybe. Marked for the Kill is a good talent. I don't like this level 20 upgrade. Resilient Flame got nerfed, so it can only proc once every 10 seconds. Thrall got buffed, so you can no longer interrupt Sunder or Earthquake. Valeera got changes. So the only orange text here is that stun duration got decreased from 1.5 to 1.25. And that's not really a big decrease. It's a big decrease of a quarter of a second, which is not too impactful. If you're just your average player, you literally won't notice this change at all. Sometimes it might feel like it comes off a little bit quicker, but that's it. So it's pretty much more for the competitive scene, and Valeera is paired a lot with stun heroes, so like Varian, and it just gives the enemy team or whatever team has Varian Valeera a ton of CC or whatever combo you're running it with. So this just reduces the CC train a little bit, especially since it's a targeted stun. So it's not like a skill shot or something that's hard to hit. It's really, really easy to use cheap shot, and you can use it pretty much every time. The other changes, again, I've talked about in the previous video, but overall, she got buffs. The only really noticeable nerf here is maybe Garrett, but they still increase the silence duration. And everything else here is pretty much buffs for the most part, especially to Cloak of Shadows. Zul'jin, these changes don't matter. Varian, overall, this is a buff. Abathur, these are buffs. So Murky got a huge rework. Um, Overall, huge buff to Murky, probably even viable and competitive, although we won't know it because competitive, at least in North America, and with HGC, won't be played for like 2 months, so we won't see Murky in competitive unless we see him in dorms or something. But he's really, really good now. I would expect bans most games. I don't know if he's like broken OP, but he's definitely a viable hero now. Just overall, they've increased and changed the effect of pufferfish. The big kind of notice here is that he got complete talent rework, and some of his talents are pretty broken. In particular, this fishy deal thing is I still think it's disgustingly broken. Basically, he gets bribe stacks, 1 per minion, and he only needs 7. So instead of needing 20 minion deaths, now you only need 7. So although the requirement is that you actually kill the minions with pufferfish rather than they just die around you, but this is really strong and it gives Murky a really, really strong bribe talent. And bribe on Murky is obviously really good because he can just go and suicide to capture a camp. He can go suicide to capture ogres, and it doesn't matter if he dies because he's Murky. So it's really hard to punish. The other changes here are, I don't know if this is actually a change or just a notification. I'm going to assume since the orange text is here that it actually used to scale with levels, so 4% per level. So by the end of the game, this 125 damage was significantly more. I'm going to assume that's what this changes, so it no longer does instead of just a tooltip update. So if that's the case, that's a pretty huge nerf to this talent, but it's still a really strong talent. The other change here is time to krill got nerfed, so they just slightly decreased the effectiveness of it. Again, a really, really strong talent. But they didn't really change any of the other talents, which is surprising because he looks really, really strong. A lot of his talents are very, very powerful. I can't overstate how good he seems. I don't even know if he's like again, I don't know if he's overpowered compared to first picks like Malfurion or Rag or something. But if you compare new Murky to old Murky, it's a huge, huge change. Okay, Nazeebo got quality of life changes. Lucio got Um, balance changes, I guess, overall. Overall, it looks like a buff. They slightly, this attack damage buff doesn't really matter that much. Sound barrier got nerfed 10 seconds. Again, I don't really know how impactful these changes were because I haven't really played them. Morales changes, quality of life. Okay, so these are like the noticeable changes for this patch. Tassadar got changed. So people again have been complaining about Tassadar being too strong for the, I don't even know how many times this has been an issue. And again, he receives buffs. So like overall, this is probably a nerf, but he's receiving buffs to like other parts of his kit. So he's not directly nerfed. He's still really, really good, and I don't think this changes his priority in picks at all. I think that he's just as good as he was before, because they keep making changes to his kit. But yeah, so overall, yeah, this is a nerf, but like, they buff other talents like this talent, and that makes him really strong. So let's go over the changes. Basic attack range increased from 5.5 to 6.5. This is a big change. Increase attack range. The other change is ramp damage. Ramp to maximum damage reduced from 8 to 5 stacks. So previously, Sonic Storm ticks multiple times per second, and every tick it does increased damage, and now you only need to cap it only needs to tick 5 times to reach its maximum damage instead of 8. They didn't lower the maximum damage cap, so if you're at 8 stacks before and 5 stacks now, you still do the same amount of damage. So you ramp up to your maximum damage faster. So that's a buff. Archon got a nerf, so the attack speed or the basic attack slows. So when you attack, the movement speed so that it provides is reduced from 40% to 30%. Force Wall, this is probably overall a buff. The cooldown was reduced from 12 to 10. The mana cost reduced. This mana cost is really low anyway. That doesn't really matter. So the cooldown was reduced by 2 seconds, but the duration was reduced by 0.5 seconds. Overall, I'd say this is definitely a buff to this talent. I still expect Archon to be taken though. Maybe situationally Force Wall. I don't know. I think Archon definitely better though. Templar's Will. So at level 1 you have 3 talents. This is one of them, and I thought this talent was decent before, but it's received significant buffs. So they double the mana that you gain from this talent, which is really good. And they've also increased instead of gaining +1 attack range, which is now baseline, they've also increased the damage of Distortion Beam, which is his auto attacks by 2.5. The 2.5 times or 150%, which is a huge change. That's a big buff to Tassadar. Kala's Light is the most significant nerf in his kit so far. Um, for this patch, armor expiration reduced from 25 to 15. So it would reduce after the shield expired, it would reduce damage that the hero takes for it was 3 or 5 seconds by 25%, and now the damage is reduced by 15% for the next 3 or 5 seconds. So that's the biggest nerf, and this isn't as impactful in your average games, but in competitive, this is a big deal because having you could shield your entire team with permanent shields, and each time each of those shields break, they reduce all damage that hero takes by 25%. So you could basically permanently reduce the damage that your whole team takes by 25%. And if you stack it with something like Varian's Ironforge banner or Banner of Iron or whatever that reduces damage by 25%, you have passive 50% damage reduction for your whole team. It's just stupid. So this is a little bit of a nerf to that kind of play. Resonance, this is a buff to that talent, so it slows a little more. This is a buff to this talent. So they're basically buffing talents that weren't really taken. I'm surprised to this buff because this talent got buffed because I think it was already taken quite a lot. And then Twilight Archon. The cooldown of Archon will no longer tick down while Archon effect is active. So what this means is so what Twilight Archon does is when you activate Archon and you get this level 20 talent, every time you auto attack, it completely refreshes the duration of Archon. So I think it's normally like a 12-second duration or something, maybe 10 seconds. So with this talent, it lasts forever as long as you're attacking something. And previously, before this patch, you could make it last for like 60 seconds, a minute, or 2 minutes or whatever. And because the cooldown is 100 seconds on Archon, the cooldown would completely refresh by the time you actually come out of Archon. So you'd effectively be permanently Archoned, and there's no counterplay to it. Or at the very least, you get like 20 to 30 seconds off of Archon. So there's no downtime after you're out of Archon. There's no counterplay with the enemy team. There's no like window to fight Tassadar when he's out of Archon. He would just permanently be in Archon, and you'd have to just fight him in it. So what happens is that it goes on full cooldown after he comes out. So it goes on a full 100-second cooldown instead of coming out and it's on like a 15-second cooldown or something. I don't know if the normal Archon was like that before this patch. So if you activate Archon normally and it's a 100-second cooldown, I don't know if you'd come out and it'd be a 90-second cooldown or if it was a 100-second cooldown. I only know for this level 20 talent it is different. And then Force Barrier, they nerfed this talent a little bit because they already reduced the cooldown of Force Wall. So overall, Force Wall is still stronger and still a 5-second cooldown. So the cooldown, it reduces the cooldown by 50%, I believe, because Force Wall's cooldown was reduced to 10 seconds. So still a really strong talent. These are just random changes. Rexxar got changes. This is a buff to the level 1 talent. So Flare lasts for 20 seconds and has a 25-second cooldown. They only have 5 seconds of downtime, which is really strong. Still don't think it's better than the Wave Clear talent. Hungry Bear surprisingly got buffed. I thought this talent was already pretty strong, but now increases heal from 4 to 4.5% of Misha's maximum health. So every time Misha attacks, she gains 4.5% now. Not the biggest change, but still noticeable. An aspect of the Beast, cooldown reduction decrease from 1.5 to 1.25. So when Misha would get auto attacks with this talent at level 7, it would reduce the cooldown of her stun by 1.5 seconds, and now that's reduced to 1.25, which is a noticeable nerf. That was definitely the strongest talent at that tier. And then aspect of the Hawk, this part here doesn't really matter. You should pretty much just ignore that. Rexxar's attack speed bonus is increased from 100 to 125%. And they've also increased the duration when Misha gets a bonus attack from 0.5 to 0.75. So this talent was already pretty good before. I didn't take this talent. I got the extra damage charge talent, but I actually think this might be a viable talent now. You can basically have 100% permanent uptime with this talent. And if you get cooldown reduction level 7 for your Q, Spirit Swoop, you could have pretty much 100% uptime on 125% attack speed bonus for Rexxar. That's a lot of attack speed. That's like the biggest attack speed steroid in the game, maybe besides Karazim or something, which is just part of his kit. That's a huge attack speed bonus. So you're almost doubling your overall damage output, maybe even more than double. Probably double if you take into consideration like Misha or something, but that's a huge damage increase, and I'd be interested. I think that's definitely a viable talent at level 13 now. So overall, Rexxar buffs. For the most part, Rexxar buffs. At the very least, it's even because of this change at level 7 here. Unfortunately, I just did a video on Rexxar, and they stealth buff him with this patch, so some of the content might be a little bit outdated now, just regarding this level 13 talent, pretty much so. All I'm going to say is that this talent's probably viable. You can take this talent. Okay, then the rest of these changes are bug changes, blah, blah, blah. Not really anything interesting. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I will talk to you later.